Hey guys, I'm Lee from Lee Likes Music, the place to share, explore, and learn about rock music from Bandcamp. And in today's video, we're going to talk about Todd Rundgren's 1972 album, Something Anything. So that's coming up. So before we get into the album review, I want to talk a little bit about Todd Rundgren's background story. So he grew up in Philadelphia, US, in a very culturally stultified environment. His father basically didn't listen to any type of rock music at all. He only listened to classical music and opera music, I believe. So that was basically the first thing that Todd Rundgren was introduced to. He even learned how to sing some of these operas himself, which is something that he has done even live in his later years as well. But as he grew up as a teenager, he was of course exposed to the Beatles, which it wasn't just a band to Todd Rundgren. It wasn't just a great band. It was also a lifestyle. It opened a vision for him to actually see that, oh, this is how someone can live their lives, and I want to inspire to do the same. That is what he was thinking at that time. So the first step he took to actually create this lifestyle for himself was to start to play the guitar in a band which was called Woody's Truck Stop. So this was basically a blues rock band. They played for maybe 1 year or a couple of years, and during the 7th of May in 1967, the band was playing in the town hall, and the audience didn't like them at all. They were basically throwing pies at them. I don't know why people did that, even if they didn't like the music. Why couldn't they just be like, boo? They had to freaking throw pies at them. So that was what they did, and at that point, Todd Rundgren said, hey, I don't want to be a part of the band anymore. Bye, guys. So then he formed another band which was called The Nas, and that was more of a pop rock band, more of a rock band, classical rock band, to be honest. That was an reincarnation of The Who, the Beatles, bands like these, and they actually did quite well. They had a lot of commercial success even before they had released any songs. They released a couple of singles that actually did pretty well. The first one was called Hello, It's Me, and that is actually a song that is featured on Todd Rundgren's Something Anything. We're going to talk about it a little bit later. But before they released any music, they had this amazing manager who was also a publicist by the side of being a manager. So he had all of these contacts within the music journalism industry. So he called up everyone, hey, check out the Nas, and you got to check out the Nas, they're coming out with great music, blah 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 blah. And before they knew it, they were basically frontlining and on the front page of so many different papers. Music articles wrote about them. Yeah, it's incredible what happened. Nowadays, Rundgren views the Nas as more of an experiment that they kind of fiddled with back in the day, and it was kind of weird because they gained so much hype and success without actually doing that much. So they were bound to fail anyways, in a way. Sometime after the Nas, Rundgren decided to go into music production, the production of records and musical engineering. So that was where he found his very steady career, sort of, and that was also the place where he could basically go in himself and actually make records for himself as a solo artist in the future. So that is what he did. He created Runt, his first solo album, in 1970. He created the Ballad of Todd Rundgren in 1971, and in 72 he of course released Something Anything. That was a little bit of background story. Now let's get into the review here. So Something Anything was an album released back in 1972. It is regarded and revered as one of the landmark albums of the early 1970s within rock music, I should say. I was a little bit confused after looking this album up again. I've visited this album several times, but the first few times I listened to it through Spotify, and on there you only have 14 tracks on the album, but the original album actually had 25 tracks, and I couldn't find the original one on Spotify. But I will leave a link to the whole complete album in the description below if you're curious and if you want to check it out. I highly suggest you do. It has a playtime of 90 minutes, which is quite long. I feel like it's kind of lengthy. I'm used to listening to albums that last for 30 minutes up to an hour. That's my personal preference, so it's a bit of a minus for me. But at the same time, I don't feel like there's any filler songs here, and that is really good. There's quality all the way through, and you just don't want to skip any of the tracks here, despite of the length of this album. So there was 2 discs or 2 vinyls, and it was a double album, a double vinyl, and he had given a title to each and every one of these sides. The first one, side A, was called A Bouquet of Ear-Catching Melodies. Side B is called The Cerebral Side. Side C was called The Kid Gets Heavy, and side D is called Baby Needs a Pair of snakeskin boots. I see the context with the first 3 titles. The first one, A Bouquet of Air-Catching Melodies, is quite a good definition to what the first tracks sound like. It's a bunch of pop tracks, a few rock tracks here and there. They have really prominent melodies in them. Side B, the cerebral side, is more of a psychedelic part of the album. At least that is what I feel. Part C, side C, is called The Kid Gets Heavy, and that is basically what is happening on that part of the album. I don't see the reference with the baby needs a pair of snakeskin boots. If any of you guys know the reference there or the context of this sentence, of this phrase, please let me know in the comments below, alright? Some of the more outstanding tracks on this album, I would say, is, of course, I Saw the Light. It's the first track of the whole album. It's a very sugar-sweet love song, I would say. It has these clinkery, outstanding percussional sounds and instruments here.
Last night I was feeling something wasn't right. There was not another soul inside.
The next track, It Wouldn't Have Made Any Difference, is also a track that kind of stands out for me. It's another ballad that sounds very Elton John-esque. I really have come to love the falsetto background vocals that you'll hear during the choruses. It almost reminds me a little bit of the Bee Gees, that high-pitched voice that they also use in their songs. Another thing that I notice is how the song is progressing. It goes into this otherworldly, very pounding after chorus that I love it every time. It just hits me right in the sweet spot, kind of. That sounded weird. Every time I listen to this record, there is one song that just blows my mind every time, and it's the 8th track. It's called Breathless. It's this psychedelic, funky track. I guess I can say with confidence that this is one of the more synth-based, synth-prominent tracks of the whole album. It features synths, of course. There's also a beat that sounds very synthesized. I don't know how he created this. Maybe he put some effects on some live drums, or maybe it's just all synth. I have no idea. The guitar is also soaked in this weird effect that makes it sound very psychedelic and synthetic in a way, but at the same time he manages to capture this very organic feel to the track as well. So it's just this meandering thing between something live recorded and something synthetic, and it sounds so authentic. It sounds like something I've never heard before. At 1 minute and 30 seconds into the song, it takes a U-turn and goes into a segment that sounds more like La Bamba by Los Lobos. You can actually go and check it out. I'll leave a link below. It sounds like this. It's just so oddball, but at the same time so cool and inventive. Then it suddenly drops away from this live instrument setting again and goes back to that synthetic nature. Amazing, outstanding track that just blew my mind when I listened to this It's incredible to think that there have been so many decades since this was made, and it was so far ahead of its time, I feel. Hello, It's Me is the 20th track on the album. Yes, it's a long album, but it's a journey worthwhile, believe me.
Hello, it's me. I've thought about us for a long, long time.
Hello, It's Me is a track that I actually mentioned earlier. It was a song that he wrote while he was a member of the Nas, and it was actually a song that they performed and gave out as well. But I think that this version of it is actually the best one, because it just captures everything that Todd Rundgren wanted this song to provide. I think this version was actually recorded with session musicians. You can hear that on the horns and also on the backing vocals in the song. So I think there might be like at least 2 or 3 versions of this one. There's one that is very similar to this one. It's basically a ballad, only with, I think it's shorter, and it doesn't have those horns and the backing vocals of those other artists or those other vocalists. Great track, lovely melody. I just love the charm of this song. Just pounds through every time and hits me. There are just so many other great tracks on this album. There is basically no bad track here. I mean, I would love to talk more about The Night the Carousel Burned Down, Saving Grace, Marlene, The Red Lights, I believe. These are some amazing songs that I would love to go more in depth into, but in that case, if I do that, this video will just turn out half an hour long, and I don't want that to happen. So yeah, this album is just a mix of so many different things. You have hard rock, you have pop rock ballads, you have these experimental, weird, woozy songs as well. There's a bit of blues, there's a bit of gospel here and there. There's a lot of different inspirations that he takes into account on this album, and there are some precursors to what he would go on to create later on A Wizard, a True Star, his next album, which is more of an experimental record where he just goes completely out of his original songwriting form. The 7th track is a great example of this. Intro is what it's called, and it's basically Todd Rundgren giving you a game. He is talking about this game that he has invented where you can actually play around with different albums and listen to the different design defects or the producing defects that are on those albums. It's a game that is called Sounds of the Studio, and he introduces you to all these sounds that he, during his time learning music production, he has learned that, oh, these are the sounds that you don't want on a nicely produced and engineered record. Sounds like hiss, hum, piece popping, bad editing, mangling of tape. This is not what you want on a record, and he's encouraging you to kind of look into other albums and see if you can find these sounds on there. So yeah, quite weird and inventive record, very versatile and it's very big. It's a big sonic soundscape that you put yourself into when you put on this record. But at the same time, it manages to be so concise and cohesive. It's a must listen. I'm gonna give this album an 8 out of 10, and yeah, that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like to share, explore, and learn about rock music from Bandcamp, then I highly suggest you click the red subscribe button below. Also, make sure you hit the bell icon beside the subscribe button, because in that way you'll always get notified when I put out new videos on this beautiful place right here. Yeah. Thank you so much for staying tuned, guys. Hope to see you later. Stay tuned. Bye.